suddenly I just, for like a minute, flashed back to like a cage match when I watched wrestling as a child. So like it is a free-for-all. The goal is to not eliminate all but one. However, you do have license to talk outside of your quote-unquote area of expertise. Is that fair? Those are the only rules, I feel like.
Thank you, Casey, for letting us be out of our areas of expertise.
Yeah, because if anything, if the one thing we need is more airtime for Jason, I just feel like he hasn't been on enough tonight.
Maybe next week you could bring... ego is exploding.
Does the first person who says IKEA win anything?
Whoa, I like that. No, the first thing we have to say, I think I promised, is rural hospitals. Yeah. Why is that important? And make it interesting for everyone.
Okay.
We're not.
Because in most rural counties in Missouri, this may not be entertaining, but it's
I say that as a rural boy.
Hospitals and school districts are probably the largest employers these days in rural Missouri. If rural hospitals start closing, and I've been saying this for a while, which some have threatened to do because of the lack of Medicaid expansion, because many of the people who would qualify for Medicaid are in rural Missouri. And they're showing up at hospitals still, and if the hospitals aren't getting the federal payments that they used to get paid for covering uninsured, and then they have to close, then the discussion in Jefferson City will change.
About expanding Medicaid.
That is the one issue that I think could prompt a total change in what happens, is if these rural hospitals start closing, even if it's just one or two, then the Republican legislators in the rural areas will really start looking at this from a different perspective.
And there's no question, as Alderman Olugby said, there is a real human impact here because of this Medicaid gap, as he mentioned. There'll be real people who won't be able to get health insurance because of this decision. But what I was going at with my wordy statement before was that there has to be outward pressure among these legislators for them to change course. And I guess we'll see in 2014 whether this issue really resonates with people and they go to the polls and maybe they change the composition of the legislature. So.
Well, Medicaid, though, is the one issue that really is national as well as state. And this is the one issue where the national fight over the Affordable Care Act actually could affect what happens in Missouri. This is one of the few issues where it's the publicity over the problems with the website and other things begin to continue to take hold in Missouri and turn the public solidly against it, then things won't change. But again, how the national debate plays out, whether the U.S. Senate changes parties, that kind of stuff actually can have an impact in what happens with Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act in Missouri. It's one of those rare issues.
The big question, and this is what maybe we won't get clarity on this in 2014, but the question is Missouri as a state government going to do anything or nothing? Are we going to be a Mississippi or a Louisiana, states that collect no taxes and provide essentially no services to their residents? Or are we going to be a state like Minnesota or Washington that collects a moderate amount of taxes and does things like provide decent schools, decent public transportation options in cities, and healthcare for residents? That's really the question. And Missouri is like 44th or 45th in terms of tax burden in the United States. I think the urban areas, St. Louis and Kansas City, are ready to go in another direction and say, state, it's okay if you collect a little bit more taxes, because the people who live in these cities over and over again are asking for better services from the state. People are not saying do less. They're saying, please.
What about the infrastructure?
I'll give Katie the last word as the music starts to play.
Well, think about the infrastructure. Have we invested to get people to the places around town they need to go? We spend very little compared to other regions on that. So in the next 20 years, what's that going to look like?